What's up, guys? It's Patrick Bartley here, professional saxophonist and part-time freelance educator. And I am in a different space than I typically am in, but nevertheless, today I wanted to present a video to you all that I think you might find interesting. So about a year ago, an older veteran of the jazz YouTube space called Learn Jazz Standards, which you probably have heard of if you looked online for some jazz play-alongs back in the day, they uploaded a video called What Nobody Tells You About Playing Jazz, where the speaker lists 7 very crucial things you need to know about learning it. Well, I thought it was too provocative and tempting of a video to watch on my own, so I decided, hey, let's react to it on stream, which I did. One way to learn jazz. You already lost me, bro. But let's keep moving. Let's see. You will quit. Hey, that's right there. No one's talking about that. That should be the whole video. That should be the whole video right here. What nobody tells you about playing jazz, you will quit. So I originally intended to take that VOD and edit it, put it on YouTube. But as I was editing, I got a second look and listen rather to some of the points that he was making in the video, and I just couldn't shake the strong feeling of disappointment with it. It wasn't even so much that I disagreed with the things he was saying in the video, because actually there were some things I did disagree with, but I just didn't like how the video was presented. It feels, at best, a little biased and misinformed, and at worst, just straight up clickbait. Like a deliberate and disingenuous waste of time for the viewers of that channel, filled with a bunch of statements that not only are not rare, but just actually things everybody says. It's things that nobody says, but everybody says them. I've not heard a single thing in that video that I think nobody's ever said before. And naturally, that left me feeling even more disappointed. So instead of just shaking my fist here and shouting into the void, I decided to actually make my own list of things that nobody tells you about playing jazz. But instead of framing it that way, I decided to make a list of what I think are 7 things people are afraid to accept about playing jazz. A little different nuance. And unlike the original video I'm referencing, I'm not gonna hide the fact that you may have heard some of these before. As a matter of fact, you've probably heard everything that I've said here in some form or fashion, but just rejected them in the past. Well, hopefully this video can get you to reframe your perspective a little bit and just get you to think a little differently. So without any more delay, here are my 7 very crucial things that you need to know about learning jazz. But before I get into the video, I want to actually take this moment to thank all my patrons over on Patreon who are getting to watch this and other videos early, including stream VODs that I can't put up on YouTube because the music's gonna get copyrighted, get taken down, whatever like that. Your support really helps me a lot and I appreciate it. So if any of you all want to see videos like this early or full, uncut, unedited VODs that we do Q&As for or any other special presentations, and sometimes we even do album previews and reviews, actually. If you want to be a part of all of that and be a part of the community, go ahead and consider navigating down to the description box below, find that Patreon link, and becoming a patron today for as little as $2.99. Either way, we appreciate you all so much. Thank you. And now let's go to the video. All right, so now that the kind of scripted part is out of the way, let's go ahead and get into this list. All right, so the first bullet point on this list of things that nobody wants to accept about playing jazz is, sorry everybody, but yes, you gotta swing. So before I can already see right now, the comments are gonna start flooding in. I'm like jazz police. I'm like one of this and that. I'm not gonna name no names specifically, but I'm like one of these people over in that big building down there in New York. I'm like, I got my suit and tie up too tight. I'm about to choke myself. Like, no, you just gotta listen. Hear me out for a second. And I shouldn't even have to say hear me out. But the reason why I'm saying this is because this music's entire language, from the beginning, the inception, is built on what we now call swing. The best way I can give you an analogy is like this. When you're learning a language, right? Let's say you're learning, I was gonna use some other language, but I'm gonna use Japanese because that's the one that I know the most right now. But you can use Spanish, French, or whatever kind of language that works too. If you're speaking a new language and you wanna learn Japanese, for example, it's okay if you just learn the words, right? If you just wanna get by, right? If your job is just to get by, you like the language and you just want to be able to say something to somebody. Okay, so if you want to learn thank you, you can say arigato, whatever. And then people will be able to parse through what you're saying. It kind of makes sense. Yeah, I got you. Yeah. Arigato. Okay, yeah. But what if you want to sound like you actually speak the language? Well, you might have to go arigato. Oh, snap. Okay, so what's in that? All right, so what's the real difference there? So the main difference is that if I'm taking from my home language, English, and trying to apply it to Japanese without caring, without thinking about whatever. I'm going to use, I guess, what they call the rhotic R. Rhotic consonant. I totally didn't just look that up before I said it. No, but rhotic R. So I'm saying arigato, as opposed to arigato, which is like kind of the closer to the rolled R. I don't even know. I didn't look that one up. So yeah, the rolled R, arigato, right? Arigato, and that's like a longer O at the end. I'm getting into the details of how to say that with the correct accent. So in order to do that, you got to train your ear, and you also have to accept that this thing over here is completely different than what you got over here that you grew up with. It's a completely different culture, and you're accepting and you're opening yourself up and accepting the differences that make that culture and that sound unique. That's the same thing you got to do for jazz. Why? Because swing is the accent of jazz. At least when it comes to traditional jazz, the funny thing about swing, if you think about it, is that even if you listen to incredible musicians, Charlie Parker, Cannonball, Dizzy, or even Miles, any of those guys, Train, any of those guys, there's a lot of recordings from back in the day, 40s, 50s, 60s, where they played straight eighth stuff. And there's still a little bit of lilt to it. There's still a little bit of this like kind of swing kind of accent to it. If you listen to like Bird play with like Machito as Afro-Cubans, if you listen to Train play like Sonny, if you listen to Dizzy play any of his incredible, Afro-Cuban Latin jazz fusion stuff when he was pioneering that, they all kind of got this little swing lilt to it. Like they're not quite speaking the exact language. You know what I'm saying? It's still incredible music. I'm just saying you can tell that they got a little bit of accent in them from jazz. I just hit the mic. I don't know if you heard that. And you can hear it vice versa when you hear musicians from other cultures try to play swing jazz. Either it sounds a little bit straight or it sounds a little bit kind of like two on the grid or whatever. It's kind of hard to like grasp that. Well, that's because that's the language of jazz. Even if you're not playing explicitly just ching, ching, ki-ding, ching, ki-ding, right? The language, right? It's the accent is connected to the words that you're learning, as we call vocabulary in jazz music. So if you're transcribing a line, I wish I had my horn with me, but I don't. If you're transcribing a line in jazz, you can't just get the notes. It's not enough to just get the notes. This is the reason why I always tell people, hey, you don't try not to transcribe by writing it down. If you want to do it, if you absolutely need to do it just for analysis purposes after you've learned it, that's cool. Okay. But you all should sing first. You gotta sing. Go in this recording, listen to it over and over and over again until it gets into your body. It's like it's there. You're feeling everything around it. You're feeling the entire context of the music. This is the most important thing for understanding how to play jazz. And this video is not going to be a swing workshop or swing masterclass because I want to get this video focused and move on to the other topics. But I just want to let you know, if you're ever having any kind of weird hangups about jazz, try to go back to the original jazz masters who were at the foundation of this music so you can get a good context for how the stuff is supposed to sound. It's like for any type of food. If you want to make good, authentic Italian pasta, probably go to a real Italian restaurant. If you want to make sushi, go to a real authentic sushi restaurant. Talk to them, see how it's made, really get into it because that stuff is attached to it. It doesn't mean that you can't make your own stuff. It just means that if you want to have something to build on top of, a good foundation, even if you don't want to play swing for the rest of your life, it's kind of hard to play something like a bird like it's kind of hard to do that if you're going to go it's the same notes, but why doesn't it sound right? That's because the accent is different. All right, so the second thing that no one really wants to accept about playing jazz is another thing that people are going to get mad at me for. This is crazy. I think this is just a rage bait video at the end of the day, isn't it? No, but it's not that. But, okay, I might have to cut that one. Jazz is black music first. So there's a reason why I'm saying first, right? First. First can mean a lot of different things. First of all, it doesn't mean that it's only for black people. Only black people can play jazz. It's, like no one else is allowed to play it. No, first means kind of two things. One is that in the beginning, of course, the accent, the rhythm, the language of jazz was pioneered by black musicians, by black people in America in the late 1800s, of course. And then the second first is that if we're going to be talking about the context of the music, we have to first talk about it in the context of the black American experience and black culture in America in general. So just like we talked about the accent, like swing being the accent of jazz, we'll also think about other elements of black culture that are also present in the music that are very unique to this music. So we can talk about the obvious musical elements that you're aware of, like the blues and swing, which actually didn't come a little till later, like the 20s, but also thinking about the other ways that black people experienced and interfaced with the American cultural landscape at the time that this music was being conceived. You have to talk about Jim Crow and the aftermath of slavery. You have to talk about the importance of the black church. You have to talk about the duality between being a northerner versus a southerner, and how all the black folks that were moving from the south into the north, how they differed in their mentality and experience of day-to-day black people in general from both regions. Let's talk about food. Let's talk about the way that black folks talked. There's so many things that you can't separate from this music, that if you were to take this concept, this idea, and apply it to any other type of music, even with, I was going to say different countries, but even within America, we talk about the Appalachian folk tradition, talk about country music. There's so many things, right? We talk about the European classical tradition. We talk about Chinese classical music or folk music, Japanese music, whatever. It doesn't matter where you go. Or we talk about Latin American music or even the Caribbean. We never, ever disconnect the cultural relevance and other elements outside of the music from the music. We just don't do it. And the reason why we don't do it is because there's not enough context given if you just have the music alone. And for some reason in this music, this is the only music I know of where we try to overtly and deliberately separate these types of this cultural origin from the music. Now, I understand the argument that a lot of people make and that might make in the comments below, which is a reasonable argument, saying that, black people weren't the only people making jazz music back in the day, which is true. We can talk about New Orleans. We can talk about the actual original melting pot. America's not really a melting pot. New Orleans actually was really a melting pot. I mean, you had people next to each other. You had you had the church and the brothel right next to each other. You had Germans, Italians, black folks, Caribbean folks, slaves, non-slaves. You had so many different people next to each other, immigrants from all over the world. It kind of was almost like the original New York City in that way. However, the analogy that I like to put, that I actually said in another video, is if you think about it being a melting pot, if you think about there's like a cookout or something, like if there's like food, right? Let's say a dish. Let's say there's like a dish that someone wants to cook, and there's like a cookout, a picnic. Well, everyone can bring their own food. Everyone can bring their own ingredients, and everyone can contribute to the pot. Absolutely. But who brought the pot? It's very important to think about from this perspective. And one of the reasons why is because the structural integrity of this music is coded within the black experience. It doesn't mean that everyone else's experience is not valid, because of course, if you think about, the one drop rule and how all the Creoles that were living in New Orleans, they went from being second class citizens to like third class citizens or whatever. There was like a secret class between white folks and black people, and they were like above black people, but not quite white people, right? And then suddenly, because if you had just one drop of black blood, you were just like everybody else. Okay, well now suddenly, like all the Creole musicians who were practicing classical music and in the opera houses, they had to bring their classical music training and knowledge, which came from Europe, of course, and they brought it into the black communities where they had the blues and other types of folk music traditions that they were practicing at the time. They kind of brought it together, and that's kind of how jazz started, right? That's what we know as the basic outline of jazz history. Not the exact, but the basic outline. So, of course, there were contributions from everybody. But first and foremost, the experience that was an antithesis to the conservative post-Victorian era of white American culture, which was to be completely, you had to be in line with what your folks wanted, what your parents wanted, like wear the long dresses, don't go too crazy, don't dance crazy, do this stuff in a very classical manner and be proper. That was not the way that black folks got down. We wanted to express ourselves. Black folks wanted to, experience the catharsis of expressing, the types of feelings that they had as being black people in America. And jazz was the perfect way to be democratic about that entire process. That's the only reason why, really, the black experience is super important to this music. Again, it doesn't mean that no one else can play the music. It just means that it's very important to understand the foundation. So hopefully that clears things up. All right, so funny enough, actually, this is a good transition into the third point that I want to make, which is you gotta learn the history in order to play this music accurately. Now, there's a reason why I said accurately, right? The reason why I said accurately is because technically, this is a free world. Well, mostly free. No one has a gun up to your head saying you gotta swing, you gotta play jazz, you have to do this exactly. No, you can technically do whatever you want. But just like, again, in the first example that I brought up, you can make sushi, You can make pasta. You can put like, you can fry some chicken, wrap some rice around it, put some crystals, hot sauce or something, and, wrap it in, I don't know, bacon instead of seaweed. What? This analogy is going nowhere. But anyway, you could do all that, call it sushi, and it'll technically be in the form of it, but it's not exactly going to be, it won't exactly fly in a Japanese restaurant, like a real Japanese restaurant. So I'm willing to guess that most of you watching this video right now, how did you get into jazz? You probably got into jazz because you heard recordings that you loved, right? And if you're serious about this music, which I'm assuming you are because you probably wouldn't have found this channel if you weren't into this super nerdy jazz stuff like I am, but you probably found this music through maybe like a serious modern jazz source, right? You probably really like Robert Glasper. You probably really like Roy Hargrove, Kenny Garrett, any of these incredible guys that you might have even saw live, which is incredible. Your friends kind of put you onto something, or maybe you saw something through the more jazz adjacent spaces like, video game music, Persona 5, anything like that, anything related to it, right? Or even some of my colleagues, whatever. The list goes on and on and on and on. The point is, you probably found these people and are like, hey, I want to know more about jazz. Where do I start? And then as you go down that rabbit hole, you start to find that, okay, who did this person listen to, right? Oh, this person listened to that person. Who did that person listen to? Oh, you're starting to see where this goes, right? As you go down further and further, I don't even know if my hand's in the frame. If you go further and further and further down this rabbit hole of learning about who these people listen to, you start to realize that, wait a minute, so much of this stuff is actually not as new as I thought. And it's a pretty serious trip. I mean, we all know the quote, right? We all know the famous quote, those who fail to understand history are doomed to repeat it. It's not quite that serious when it comes to music, but it's just like a good thing to know. It's a fun thing to know, especially when you feel like you've come up with something new for the first time, and then you go back to like 1946 and you're just like, okay, wait, no, someone's already thought about this. And that very fact shouldn't make you depressed. It should actually make you excited because now you actually have some field research of like, hey, this person tried this thing. Let's see how they did it, right? Let's see how they did it. What did they do with this concept? What did they do with this idea? And even besides that, it's just fun. It's just really fun. Learning the history not only allows you to understand like where the trail of influence goes, like who this person listened to and they listened to and they listened to and they listened to, which I'll give you an example of in a second, but it also just puts you in the mindset of where the players were at the time. Like if you think about like, why did such and such write this tune? For example, like in the 1960s, there was a lot of musicians like Charles Mingus, John Coltrane, Albert Ayler, a lot of even the free jazz musicians, right? Or even like Max Roach and Abbey Lincoln. They made a lot of extremely politically charged albums at the time. And if you're just listening to the music and you don't really understand like the history of the time, you might be like, dang, what the heck is this stuff? Why are they so aggressive? Why are they so like, it's like free? What are they doing? And then you go and realize, oh, this was like the civil rights era, the protests. There were like women's rights. There was a political assassination. There was like unrest. There was like so much stuff going on during this time that the musicians couldn't escape. They couldn't get away from it, right? You go to the 1940s and when bebop was happening, the war just ended and the country's getting faster. There's a lot of prosperity happening. There's also like a divide between like people who want to dance and people who want to just go to the clubs and listen to the music. This stuff is a really cool way to engage with the music beyond just the notes. It really is fun, y'all. And one of the reasons I love the history so much is because I can, again, not only can I can step into the mind of these players, I can get context for like, what are the movies? What are some of the popular songs? Why did they decide to do this? Who did they listen to get inspiration to do this? And it kind of becomes this whole lived experience where you're not just being kind of a boring student of just technique. You know, you're actually living and breathing the whole thing. And it starts to feel less like work and more like you're watching Netflix in a way. So yeah, learn your history. It's really fun. Do it because it's fun. That should be the main reason. All right, so moving on to number 4. The fourth thing that I want to talk about that people don't want to accept is actually something that by this point, you've probably already heard me talk about a few times. And if you haven't, well, welcome to this concept that might also confuse you. But in this music, sounding good is more important than sounding original. All right, so in case you haven't clicked off the video already, thank you very much. I appreciate it. But the reason why I say this is specifically because if you think about it, do you want to be a person like when you're learning this music, what is your ultimate goal? Is your ultimate goal really to sound original or is it to sound good? Now, I'm not here to judge. There's some people that do want to just sound original and that's fine. You know, that's their main goal. However, imagine this before I get into explaining this. Imagine you go into a club or a jam session or anything, and you just got done playing, and you were like feeling all right, you know? Somebody walks up to you, and instead of saying, "Man, you sound great," they say, "Wow, you definitely sound original. You don't sound like anybody else." I'm trying to stop laughing, but you know what I mean? Like, do you really want someone to come up to you and tell you, "Yeah, you know, you definitely sound unique"? I'm sorry, I'm really trying to keep it together, but it's true, y'all. It's true. Your main focus when playing any type of music, right? If it's not for yourself, right? If the music is just for yourself and you don't care about sharing it with anybody else, you don't care about sharing anything that's inner, and you don't care about making a career in jazz, you don't care about playing with anybody else, you're just in your room. You're what people call, I guess, a bedroom musician. I don't know. I'm not trying to throw shade. It's just what people call it. It's a term. You can sound original all you want. You can get your little playlist on YouTube or whatever music title, whatever platform you use, and have like 352 recordings of stuff no one's ever listened to before, or like super deep cut. You want to deep dive in this discography. You found, oh man, what's this 1978 recording of such and such of Joe Tinkle Blaster? And I never, oh man, like they haven't heard this one. And it's like, okay, cool. You definitely don't sound like nobody else. I didn't say you sounded good, but you don't sound like nobody else. So yeah, no, that's not what we want. And again, this seems super judgmental, but we got to think about it in logical reasoning, right? So if we're trying to play this music, and we know that quote unquote jazz is a language, right? They like to say jazz is a language. So if jazz is a language, can you speak to people if you just make up your own vocabulary? If you go up to somebody and they ask you a question, you go, I mean, that's definitely an original thing. It's super original. But can anybody understand what you just said? What is your point? Is your point to just shout at somebody, just to let them know you exist? Or is your point to communicate a message? When we're playing this music or any type of music, we want to really focus on communicating a message to people. We want to make sure that we're doing things, we're not trying to please everybody. There's a difference between pleasing someone, like just kind of trying to do things because people tell you to do it, versus being able to connect to a common language. That is the goal that we're trying to do in this music. And the truth of the matter is, if you want to connect to that language in the music, you have to find out what all the common recordings are, right? There's another video that's going to be coming soon that I'm going to make about this. I've been promising it for a while. But the kind of long short about it is that back when I was coming up, I mean, I'm not that much older than most of you watching the video, or even some of you that are older than me. You all remember what I'm talking about. We had record stores. And also, even when I was in high school, by the time I was in high school, we would share like USB flash drives with certain albums on it or whatever. But the music was shared communally. There wasn't recommendations. There was just, hey, you got to check out this recording. Check out this recording. And it was passed down for decades. Like, you got to know this recording. And we all knew that. But nowadays, it's even harder than it's ever been to get that common language, specifically because everything's scattered. And especially since the pandemic, it's hard to actually connect with people. And there are so many people around the world that want to learn this music, which is amazing. We want that. We want people to learn the music. But we're going to have to find a way to simulate getting common recordings for common language, so that you can find, if there's like, I don't know, like one artist that everyone says you got to check out and they have 10 albums, you don't really like, you cannot like 9 albums, but there's at least one. Or maybe you hate all 10 albums, but there's at least one track on one of those albums. Boom, you're already tapped in. You have to get with that common language, so that you can assimilate that style into your playing and then connect with everyone, so that as soon as you play a note or anything, as soon as you get on stage, they can understand where you're coming from. And from there, you can open up your original language. How do you do that? Well, you are already a unique combination of things that you like and don't like. So by virtue of that alone, you are already original. No one, if you can take 2 people, listen to the same artist, even to the same track. One person might like 1 minute and 37 seconds that one moment, and somebody else might like 4 minutes and 52 seconds of that moment. Who knows? You're always going to be original. So don't worry about being original right now. Worry about sounding good. That is your number 1 priority. All right, so number 5. This one may come as a shock to some of you, especially my students and all my educators out there. But hear me out. Jazz was not meant for the schools. Now, once again, hear me out. Hear me out on this, all right? It doesn't mean that you can't learn jazz in school. I'm a product of jazz education. I contribute a lot to jazz education. I love jazz education. I think it's one of the best things that's happened to this music in terms of like being able to provide opportunities for people to not need to go into danger, to not need to sacrifice their whole life, just to learn a 2-5-1. I think it's great. I think that's awesome. However, the thing that's extremely hard to teach when it comes to this music, and remember, if we're talking about the black culture, we're talking about history, we're talking about so many of these things that you have to know, right? Well, then there's also other things that you should know about the music, which is context. We need context. We can't just teach jazz in a vacuum. This music, there were not people on the street like, I don't know, shooting dice and doing whatever, like, having a drink and then like writing like, this 2-5-1, blah, 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 blah. And they wasn't doing, no, they showing up. I mean, you had people like, there's stories of Sidney Bechet showing up to a rehearsal. I think he pulled one of these. I'm not gonna say the word. I don't know if I'm gonna get demonetized for saying the word. He pulled one of these. He pulled one of these out on somebody for saying, no, that's like a C minor 7. That's not a C minor, blah, blah, blah. Or like, dang, that's how serious he was about it. I mean, you have stories of Charles Mingus knocking people out. You got we already know the stories about Bird and how unsavory that was. Now, this isn't to say that you need to do these things. No, I would never say that. You have people like Clifford Brown, who was notorious, and Eric Dolphy, 2 notoriously clean people, historically clean people, never did drugs, didn't do any type of stuff like that. Very clean people. So obviously it's possible, but they had a little cheat code known as being alive in the 50s. No, but seriously, they didn't have to do the stuff. They saw the stuff every day and they were avoiding it, getting away from it. It was just a reality that they all had to deal with. They understood that. The language was naturally there. But y'all got to understand, one of the issues that people have with this music, even outside of jazz, and why they kind of don't understand and don't want to get into it, is because they don't realize that jazz is just as vulgar and raunchy and messed up as any other music that you got going on today. Seriously. In some cases, it's kind of worse. I mean, think about the laws that were not in place back then. Think about the societal things we didn't agree on back then. Think about all the misogyny, the racism, my goodness, there's so much stuff that was going on. Homophobia, everything that we're such a safe world nowadays compared to what jazz was like back in the day. In Jelly Roll Morton's time, like back in Louis Armstrong, like in New Orleans, oh my goodness. But yet, we look at that music and we see that it's like, oh, this is just happy triad music. It's all like da 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 ga 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 da ga da. It's like, oh, it's simple. But then you hear like, oh man, you go to the 60s, 70s, this is modern stuff. This is the real stuff. Substitute 2/5, this and that, and chromatic modulation. It's like, bro, it's one of the reasons why people think jazz is a certain way. But you can't teach the vibe of jazz, the hipness of jazz, the entire ethos, the complex history and relationship that humanity in the world has had with jazz since the beginning of its time. You can't really teach that in school because the parents are probably going to complain about it. Sorry. So the reason why I'm saying all this is to not so overtly and not so explicitly say the things that you should learn about, but come on, we've all been teenagers before. We've all been young before. We know there's things that we learned about that our parents didn't want us learning about. And I'm not trying to say that your kids need to learn that, but I'm just saying you have to be real and honest that there's ways of talking about this music and talking about the reality of this music without encouraging them or feeling like they're going to go off and do that. We don't need to be prudes. We don't need to be too afraid of sharing this stuff with people. We share other things with them, and believe it or not, listen, it's 2025. They're going to see some stuff whether you want them to or not. So why not be ahead of the curve and actually teach these things to the kids so that they can understand the reality of the music and get a better picture of like, dang, this was actually some real stuff. Like, I want to stay away from that because this person died early, this person did that, whatever. I want to have a nice, healthy life and live long like all our other heroes did that got to live longer. Like Sonny Rollins, like I'm going to learn from this and not do this. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just means, hey, this is a reality of the music. This is some hardcore stuff. It really is hardcore stuff. And maybe that 2-5-1 you're playing, you might have a little more meaning in it. Maybe you'll feel cool for doing it now instead of thinking it's just some nerdy, heady, theoretical stuff. Some serious stuff, y'all. Number 6.
Which leads me to number 6, which is You Will Quit.
This is another one that y'all might not like. I think this must be just like a list of stuff that nobody likes. Compilation. But no, number 6. Sorry, y'all. Jazz is a competition. Now, if you play it for yourself at home, it's not a competition. But if you're going to be playing out in the real world, Just like any other business, this is a competition. And what I mean by that is, it doesn't mean that you're out to get other people and you're trying to fight them and beat them for whatever. No, it just means that just like all types of healthy competition, you know, if you think about it let's think about it from the easier way to think about it, from the practical sense. If you want to be hired for a gig, well, you need to be better than the other person or other people that are trying to get hired for the gig. It's that simple, right? Like there's not an audition process like it's a school, which is kind of the hard thing about jazz, and I understand that, right? Like in certain instances, it's more clear cut. But in jazz, there's no audition process. There is a type of audition process, but it's a little different. The jazz audition process is respond to emails, show up on time, actually listen to the music. I don't know, dress well, have good communication skills. That's the audition. It's not you get a piece that you have to sight read and you're going to make Allstate or whatever region band or something. No, playing alone is not enough to get called for gigs. So that's like on a business standpoint. We understand that, right? And then at the end of the day, the reality is that you got to somebody has to like you. They have to like you more. Even if you have all those stuff better and they just don't like you, well, you can't fight that. Sure. But in the other way, in terms of jazz as a competition, is that something that's missing now that used to exist back in the day was the cutting contest. Actually competing with other people, actually saying like, hey, I can cut you on this tune. Man, the thing that did for musicians back in the day, right? People being afraid to lose a gig, people being all this type of stuff, this kind of healthy fear and also healthy competition encouraged people to get better on their instrument. But now it's like, you know, when people say jazz isn't a competition and music isn't a competition, they're mainly saying that to kind of get people away from the idea that, you know, I got to compare myself to this person and nothing I like is good enough, or what was like. No, people want you to have confidence in the stuff that you like and that you can live in a world where your opinion matters, which is true. But that is just not the reality of getting good on your instrument. But not everybody wants to be good on their instrument, and that's totally fine. I'm not saying that to be funny. I'm not saying that sarcastically or like, well, I guess you don't have to be good. Like, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying quite literally there's something that I learned that, yeah, some people, they just want to play at a level that's just enough. And that's fine. They want to play a song. Maybe they want to play a simple melody. And they just don't care about being the best musician. Not everybody, you know, there's a reason why there's a best. There can only be one best. So not everybody has to be that, and no one can be that. But there's something about that grind. There's something about trying to push past what you already are, your base level. Something about that is what drives the music forward, and it has always driven the music forward, because no matter what, if people were competing on who can play the highest, who can play the lowest, who can play the quietest, who can play the loudest, who can play the fastest, who can play the slow, I don't know if there's a slow competition, but well, I mean, there is, like who can play the dirtiest slow blues tempo, but whatever. I digress. You get my point. No matter what area people were competing in, there was always some level of competition, and no one had any true animosity towards each other. At the end of the day, it was about the music. Because anybody who got really violent or weird outside of the music, they didn't last long. They didn't last long. Either quite literally because they would be in prison or something, or just the community wouldn't just associate with that person. But if they kept it in the music, then everybody can get better. It elevates, when everyone wants to get better at something, it elevates the entire level of the community. This is the competition. I mean, quite literally. And like I said in the beginning of this segment, it literally is a competition to get hired. So you can't just be original and just do your thing and expect somebody to call you. No, you're going to have to want to be liked by people that you want to get called by. And it doesn't have to be a negative thing. It can just be a reality check for you. Hey, do I really want to be involved with this? Who do I want to play with? Maybe you find out you don't really want to play with them. It's up to you to decide. But avoiding the competitive aspect of the music is only going to hamper, or what's the word? It's only going to, I guess, yeah, you can use that word. It's only going to hinder your growth in the music. So think about it and find out how you can have a healthy relationship to competition in jazz. And number 7, the last point. We made it. And you made it. Thank you. The last point, which is kind of obvious, but to tie everything together, y'all, no matter what these videos like to tell you, not mine, because I don't say that, but whenever all these videos that might be related on the side of the video, column on YouTube tell you, there are no shortcuts in this music. None. No single PDF book, no single patterns book, no single theory book, whatever kind of stuff. None of that is going to secretly bring you to the next level and make you a better musician and it's not going to happen. That's not how it works. Supplements are supplements, but they're not food. You understand that? At a certain point in time, you gotta eat food. You gotta eat the whole meal, right? You gotta eat the whole thing. If you want a healthy and fun and enjoyable time with this music, you have to understand that you're probably not gonna sound exactly how you wanna sound, ever. It's probably not gonna happen. And the sooner you can accept that, the faster you can get to having fun. That sounds weird, right? What do I mean by that? And like, oh, Patrick Bartley, of course he's saying that. He's already good. It's like, I didn't start off this way. I've been playing jazz for 21 years. And that's still not enough compared to, that's less than half of what most of my like colleagues and peers have played that I play with in New York. They've been playing longer than I've been alive. And even you talk to some of them, they don't sound, you can talk to some of them, they're in their 60s, 70s. They're just like, yeah, I still don't sound like I want to sound. But did they give up? No, of course not, because they love the music. That's the point. And they love practicing. They love the process of grinding. They love the process of engaging with this music in a way that makes them just get from one step to the next, just a little bit more. And you got to get that way too. You need to have a love for this music to motivate you to even begin to put the instrument in your hands, to your mouth, whatever, how you play, and continue to go through that process. That is the only way you're going to be able to get to that level. You need to have a love for it. The overwhelming benefits to your life and your health are staggering. I mean, just playing music in general has so many scientifically proven benefits. Playing, listening, engaging with music in some kind of way, dancing, any other kind of stuff. There's a reason why we have it. There's a reason why we have been doing this for so long. Before we even knew how to communicate with words, we were communicating with sounds. We're programmed to recognize sounds. It's in our DNA to love music. Isn't that amazing? And to me, that's enough of a reason to convince me that it doesn't matter if I'm going to be the best. It doesn't matter if anybody is going to get to whatever levels that they want to achieve, but they're going to get just a little bit closer. Every day that you practice one thing, you do something a little better than you could have did yesterday. And it keeps going. And I want you all to relish in that fact. That right there is the number one thing. I know it's number 7 on this list, but it is the number one thing out of all the stuff I talked about, is understanding and being able to come to terms with the fact that there are no shortcuts in this music. Just like there's no shortcuts to watching this video. That's why it's so long. Sorry about that. But either way, this is really important, and that's why I want to leave you with this bullet point, because there are no shortcuts, but there are ways to make your life easier, right? So maybe easy is not the best word to use for this, but we can say simpler, or simpler and easier. The way to make your life simpler and easier with this music is to realize, maybe this is like a hidden number 8 that I didn't write down, but this is a communal music. This is a communal music. So if you want to make your life easier, go share your music and your passion with somebody else. There's online communities everywhere. There's my Discord. Join, links in the description. There's so many different ways that you can engage with this music that have not even existed until this time in history right now. It's amazing. It's actually a beautiful thing. And I think that more than ever, people are really interested in wanting to play this music. We're in a new Renaissance time and period in jazz, right? And if you're having trouble with something, you can go talk to somebody else about it. You can come to us. You can go to other Discords. You can go to other communities. You can go outside of your local jam session. Experience the joy and passion of this music that was the foundation for this even starting in the first place. This music didn't start in somebody's bedroom, online on a YouTube recommendation playlist or whatever. This started in the hood. All different types of hoods. People coming together and say, hey man, you know the blues? You know this tune? You know a rag? Let's go ahead and play it. Let's jam. There's like 3 or 4 of us. Let's get down. That's how the music was born. So go out there and make some friends with the music. Do that. Because again, there's no shortcuts, but that will at least help you to have a healthier and more fun time with engaging with this music and all of the struggles and wonderful fun experiences that it has to offer. Okay, everybody, so that's my 7 very crucial things you need to know about playing jazz. What nobody actually tells you about playing jazz, or whatever, like whatever the video is called, I forgot. But that's my concept in my not so response video to what was going on over on Learn Jazz Standards. But again, this is not really so much of a call out video to them, more of like a call to action. We need better jazz education on YouTube, right? And I have a lot more videos planned like this that I'm going to be making very soon. So if you don't want to miss when those videos come out, go ahead and subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, and of course, join the Discord, because it's where all of us are talking. We talk about jazz every single day and other things too. It's a fun place. We always have a lot of fun. And once again, thank you so much to all the patrons over at Patreon for supporting this video and supporting me. I appreciate y'all so very much. And I'm looking forward to doing more stuff this year and the coming year as well. All right, well, thank you so much for watching, everybody. If you enjoyed this video, up on this side of the screen, I think somewhere over here, I don't know, I got some other videos for you to watch. So go check those out. Music or education related, whatever. Thank you, everybody.